Chapter 1. Alexander. Alexander the Great, Gaius Julius Caesar, both great military commanders, both great battlefield geniuses. What did these two have in common aside from commanding respect and changing world history? Both were born in July. They were cancers, just like me. History can say what it wants about how evil or how good they were. The one thing they couldn't say about them is that they didn't live with passion. They took risks, foolish risks, always leading the charge. And that's why all these years later we still study them. Our military still uses some of their battlefield strategies. What Einstein was to physics, Beethoven was to classical music, Alexander and Julius Caesar were to military generalship. I will not let darkness steal the glory of my victory. That was Alexander's response to Parmenian's suggestion to attack the Persian camp at night, even though Alexander had 1/3 of the forces. That takes balls. It takes vision, trusting yourself to lead your army into the mouth of certain death. You remember they had no tanks, no bombs, and no air support. It was hand-to-hand combat, seeing men's faces as you plunged your sword into them, and watching them take their last breath, seeing their eyes close forever, hearing the screams of dying men. These are things we often overlook because our attention is on the battle and its maneuvering. 1,500 years after Alexander, the Crusaders undertook a similar trip to the Middle East. They lost more men to disease, hunger, thirst, and the elements than to enemy troops. We often think of history as marching forward, and new generations being superior to the ones preceding. In this aspect, Alexander and his generals were 1,000 years ahead of their time. The third, final, and most generous offer Darius made would have surrendered to Alexander all land west of the Euphrates. It would have given Alexander the land of the Ottoman Empire. He would also have made Alexander co-ruler of what he had left. He would also have given him his daughter's hand in marriage, and paid a considerable amount of money. It is mind-boggling to think of what would have happened if Alexander had taken this offer. The greatest curse of Alexander was that he didn't know when to stop and consolidate what he had gained. He just wanted to keep conquering, further and further abroad. Even if he had not passed away so young and been ever victorious, he still would have lost his empire and legacy after his death. He never made any effort to solidify his rule beyond some symbolic gestures. I believe if he had taken the offer and worked to consolidate his rule, he could have created one of the greatest empires in history, with plenty of time left to take more land due to his young age. In the end, however, Alexander the Great's worst enemy was himself. The Persian army was at least 500,000 troops, and they had built obstacles in front of their position in an attempt to break up the integrity of advancing Macedonian formations. That is what trapped them as Alexander shifted nearly everything to the right, swinging around the obstacles and completely flanking the maneuverable Persian host. Persian field obstacles proved to be a trap for their own forces. Alexander took the companion cavalry to the Persian rear and directly charged Darius, who fled the field with his guards. The entire Persian army crumbled and scattered. Alexander baited the Persians with an advance to his right against their left flank. Alexander played on Persian expectations that he would attack their left side, and instead had another plan. The Persians would respond to his move and attack his right flank. Alexander would use his flying reserves against the Persians to hold them off, while he would continue moving. That would provoke Darius to commit more forces on his left to stop Alexander. Alexander fed his forces with reserves, pinned down the Persian cavalry, and by that action attracted more of the Persian cavalry, which exposed their center. Alexander then targeted the center with his companions, who hadn't participated in the battle until this point. The gap in the Macedonian line occurred after the phalanx tried to follow up on Alexander's attack, and the Persians even made it to the camp. Some rumors spread that the night